We'll do a call to order, 9 o'clock. Amy, would you please do a roll call?
Commissioner Ashworth,
Here.
Commissioner Banks,
Here.
Commissioner Hassler, Commissioner Schwerin,
Here.
Commissioner Wild,
Here.
Commissioner Schwerin is on her way. She will be here shortly.
No, Schwerin's here.
Sorry. Commissioner Hassler is on her way. Sorry. Would you join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Please rise. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. We see all that red out there. We weren't sure whether you were wearing it for Valentine's Day. That was a pun. There's not much red out there. So which also means there aren't many Chiefs fans in the room. Is that correct?
There's a parade.
There was a parade today. That's correct. There is a parade. Both have Valentine's Day and a Chiefs Day, right? Anyway, happy Valentine's Day. Enjoy the weather. It's going to turn tough on Friday, I guess. We have a very busy agenda today, not that we don't always. So we're going to have to make a couple of adjustments to the timing of the agenda. So what you'll see here is we will begin with the swearing in. Thank you all for your commitment to what you're about to do in the future. Then we'll have an external group talking to us about branding, and then we'll make the adjustment into the agenda. It would normally be under the chief's report, but due to the timing of the virtual presenter, he needs to be on the video at 9:30 our time. And then we'll move through the rest of the agenda. So just wanted you to be aware of that. Couple of tidbits, and please, rest of the board. Good morning, Ms. Ashler. Please weigh in on other things, but first and foremost, please keep Father Briner in your prayers. His brother passed away last week, so we'll do that. And secondly, saw the initiative on the child care. It's taken us a while to get there, so congratulations on all of you who have worked on it, and great news for all of our officers. That's just wonderful. It's great to see it coming. Thank you. Anything else? Very good. With that, would the 7 of you join us up front? If maybe WashU could be on one side and the police department, the airport would be on the other. We'll do one swearing in, meaning the main swearing in. If you guys, yeah, so we can see all of you. Thank you. We'll all do the same swear in the beginning, and then we'll have a particular focus for just WashU and a particular focus for the airport. Does that work? All right. If you would say it again. Yeah, I hope I got it right. If you'll just repeat after me, everybody take a deep breath. All right. Raise your right hand. I state your name. You solemnly swear that I am a citizen of the United States, that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States, the state of Missouri, and the charter and ordinances of St. Louis County, that I will faithfully adhere to the regulations provided in the rules and procedures for deputization as adopted by St. Louis County, and that I will faithfully demean myself as a deputized officer of the St. Louis County Police. So help me God. Very good. So there are 2 other things that we need to tell you, one each. For the police department, you as a deputized officer of the St. Louis County, you are restricted to the protection of persons and property at Lambert St. Louis International Airport. For WashU, as a deputized officer for St. Louis County, your authorization is restricted to the protection of persons and property on the Washington University campus. Understood? Thank you for your oath. Thank you for all that you're going to do for our community, our students, our travelers, and everyone else. We appreciate you. Welcome to the deputized group. Wonderful. Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
On your way if you would like. Again, thank you all for being here to support them.
Thank you all again. Appreciate it.
Michelle's saying the same thing. All of you in the back, all of you standing. What happens when you get here late? You have to sit in the front. Captain. All right, sir, we will turn it over to you for the branding presentation.
Everyone, again, happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Hope all you guys took care of your Valentine's needs. I was reminded by a friend of mine to make sure I took care of mine. So I'm going to be okay. I think my wife will be happy tonight. So, well, I don't know about that, but anyway. We have a presentation this morning by a group called Elasticity. We talked with them some time ago. Our PIO, Tracy Patterson, and her group talked with this group about getting us a brand name, okay? And when we first, just to highlight our department, when we first talked to them, the brand name that we came up with that we all know that we're known by, what are we known by?
County Brown.
County Brown. And they were seriously thinking about using that as our brand name, County Brown, because everybody knows about County Brown, whether they're the good guys or the bad guys. They know about County Brown. So, Tracy, why don't you come up and introduce your group, and we'll get started with that.
So again, it's Elasticity is the group that has been working with us for over a year now to make this all culminate into today, where they're going to present their ideas. We're very excited about moving forward. So Nick is going to come up and present the information. Thank you.
Morning, Nick.
Good morning. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm going to run through a quick overview of what we've done with our work thus far, and then where we're going to take it, hopefully going forward with board approval for this marketing initiative. I'm going to try to keep this short. I've got way more slides and I probably have time for. I know we're on a hard stop for what comes next in the agenda. But very quickly, I want to go through some overview, the basis of the platform, some research we performed, and then go over the idea in general in terms of the brand. So
Nick, can we interrupt for just a second? Sorry to break the train of thought, but can you tell us a little bit about Elasticity?
Yes. So my name is Nick Walden. I am Senior Vice President, Area Creative Director at Elasticity. We're a St. Louis-based agency that works on anything from branding to digital marketing campaigns. We're on our 15th year this year. We do a lot of work for the state of Missouri, specifically with public health initiatives. We've done brand initiatives across Missouri and nationally. One of the most recent ones that we worked on was the St. Louis County rebrand that launched last month. So we've been working on that in tandem along with this. We're a full service agency. We employ nearly 30 full-time individuals, and we have an office in Midtown. So coming at this from an angle of a lot of St. Louis natives working on this and a lot of people from the area, we have a unique perspective on this of knowing what the challenges can be coming as a police department and not having a solidified public campaign or image that we know that we need that in order to breed some positive sentiment and respect for our officers and what they do. The objective of our project here was to build a comprehensive brand campaign. So that's more than just a tagline or more than a brand name. What we want to do is make sure that we're putting forth the proper personality and repeatable touch points with our audience, which includes residents in St. Louis County, business owners, and anyone that travels through. We want them to know what we stand for, and we want to build that trust and positive sentiment over time. One of the biggest things that we were working against is a continued lack of confidence in police work. We've had our own issues locally. There's been a lot nationally, but coming off of the most recent citizen satisfaction survey, we were seeing a decline in that support and positive sentiment toward the department. And part of our mission was to come in here and not only give some tools and outline for how we can work to address that from a more tactical level, but how do we put that in a package that is both memorable, makes sense, and authentic to to the strengths of our county department. So shifting those perspectives takes two things in our mind. It's care and commitment. Care in the actions and messages communicated in terms of being authentic and meaning what we say, and a commitment to maintaining that consistency over time. Because from a purely marketing standpoint, that consistent message is what sticks in people's mind. You can hear something once and it may stick there for a little bit. Everyone just watched the Super Bowl this last weekend. I'm sure you remember the funniest commercials, but that slips over time if you don't see them over and over again. So part of that marketing is messaging putting those messages in a repeated way that lets people see, understand, and experience it through a lot of different touch points instead of just one. It's not just billboards, it's not just TV spots, it's internal and external. So what that included for us was a few different stages in this branding campaign. So it's not just coming back with, hey, here's our cool ideas and here's the great stuff that our creative and design team did. The process included some analysis. We conducted a full day brand workshop with a lot of great people from the department that we received a lot of unique perspectives working through bigger questions like, why does the county police department exist? What are our core strengths as a department that we want individuals to know when it comes to thinking about us? What's our personality? How can we say something in a way that's uniquely us as a department that doesn't ring false or doesn't make sense? So from that, we came back and we also conducted some in-person research intercepts at a few different events here locally in different parts of the county to get one-on-one question and answer sessions so we can get some good data on what that perception was throughout different places in the county, throughout different people and their viewpoints. All of that turns into the strategic work of building a framework for a campaign that, like I said, is repeatable across those different touch points in terms of anything from our website to the content that the public information office is producing that goes out for people to see, and the way that we talk about the department internally, and even how we look at new recruits and how we message those types of things. So it's encompassing of all of that. What our main job was to come in and help set that framework, so then we can help the internal teams build and take it from there and help support it going forward. So the platform, when we're looking at it, our kind of lane here was building a few different things to make sure we had maximum impact across all of the different channels we have to communicate with. That includes a brand strategy, looking at key messages, and then building those campaign guidelines and guidance on launch materials. That includes part of that core ideology that helped was developed in that brand workshop, and then also with the team at Elasticity, came with kind of these three main portions. So the brand personality identifies the target audience, identifies our unique position to that audience, and to that it is to people of communities who expect professional and compassionate public service. St. Louis County Police Department is committed to leading. So that's our position. That's what we want people to understand. Those aren't the exact words we're going to use, but that's the kind of the guiding principle here for the brand. The core tenets of that brand, the things that make up the framework that we will, live by, is leading by example, having transparency, treating teamwork and discipline as paramount, and being reliable, which I know some of those things would go without saying for a police department, but those are the things that we know lead into what what the residents and visitors see from us when they're either experiencing a conversation with an officer or when they have any interaction with the department at large. Personality, branding is always a weird thing because you want to put real human characteristics to a brand. People connect with other people, and those personality traits are vital to making sure that you've got a tone of voice that resonates. Our personality includes leadership, we're dependable, we're compassionate, and we're innovative. Those types of personality traits come up a lot when it comes to people in positions of authority. The innovative piece there is also important because it's not something where we're just committed to where we are now. We're committed to improving in the future and being something where we're constantly looking to make that positive change. The core messaging from this, is threefold in the main messaging. We work to deliver the exceptional. We know that our officers, and even from some of the research I'll go through here in a second, that they are committed to providing exceptional service and being exceptional individuals when they're out in the field or when they interact with each other. We raise community through service. The service we provide, not just the protection side of it. Our interactions with the community breed that trust, and that's core to what we do as a brand. And we have power and partnership because we know that we are the county police department, but we also know there are municipal police departments. We know there are business partners. We know that we don't do this alone as a department, and those partnerships make us more effective and make us a more powerful brand. Very quickly, just in terms of a snapshot, I mentioned that we went through and did some in-person interviews to gauge what's the perception, what are the words that individuals come back with to say how they describe the police department. There were a lot of things that were positive. There were some that we can definitely work on, but the things that kept coming up over and over were that we were community oriented, we were professional. The chief mentioned the county brown earlier, which was something that we found interesting in terms of that colloquial phrase. But what did that really represent outside of that phrase? It was that we were identifiable in the field. People knew that they could come to us and identify us, and they also knew that a lot of those interactions had a professional nature to them. It was something they could trust. The perception of the department was, 75% of the respondents viewed the department positively, even extremely positive, over 50%. The negative definitely was outweighed by some of these more positive. The issue that we're really running against is most people don't have a day-to-day interaction with an officer or with the county police department as a whole. The people we're talking to and the perceptions we're working to change, by and large, come from people who don't have that one-on-one interaction. And if they do, it could be a random, maybe your tags are expired, maybe you're speeding, maybe your car was broken into. It's not always a positive situation that you're having that. We want to make sure that we are getting that positive message out there and that brand sentiment in areas other than those one-on-one interactions that may not always be positive. We need people to see that message out in the wild. So the main insights from that research and from our work with the teams were kind of three main things that we could go to a campaign with. We're proven exceptional. The data backs it up in terms of what individuals said in their interviews and the types of service we're providing and the caliber of officers we have in the field. We can back that up. These are things that have to be true to us. We need an inclusive campaign, inclusive more than just external when we're looking at recruitment. We need it to be internal as well, because that sort of change in perception also works from the inside. We can build trust in numbers. So the data that we receive from things like those citizen satisfaction surveys and some of the data that we were able to gather puts up a good backdrop to say we can back up what we say and quantify it. We're not afraid to commit to that when it comes to any sort of campaign. It's not just words. We're ready to back that up. The single most important question is something that we pose to our teams internally for coming up with any sort of marketing initiative. Here specifically, it was how do we communicate leadership, confidence, and respect while remaining approachable and not coming from such a position of authority that no one wants to talk to us, or a place of fear, because we know that's not going to gain the positive sentiment that we need. But we want to build that trust in the communities we serve. So going through all of that in terms of the backdrop to the work that we've been doing is always important, because it's very easy to come in here with taglines and flashy graphics and say, hey, here's this new brand campaign. But I wanted you all to see and understand the work that came before it to know how it informed what we had been working on. So our approach to this campaign is to show the St. Louis County Police Department as a highly professional regional leader committed to serving the trust, safety, and growth of their communities and residents. What that means is we need to make a cultural touch point. To increase sentiment, people must see the brand where they are, not necessarily when they're meeting, when we have those connections with officers out in their everyday life. So we need to make it so that they can see it as well. there were a lot of words that came out of the brand session and the work we were doing that were work to describe the department as a whole. And you'll see a little bit of a through line here in terms of the things that came up over and over. There was a lot of collaboration. This communication is important. Community was something that was mentioned several times, but also the emotional side of being compassionate, having that teamwork, it's cohesive. You can see a lot of through lines here in terms of what we're looking at. So there's an interesting through line here in terms of the CO and co. There's a couple meanings. One means jointly or together, something we're not doing alone. It's also an abbreviation for county. So that led us to St. Louis County Committed, the title for our campaign that we're recommending here. You'll see in terms of not only the graphics that follow, but the messaging and some of the ideas of how we bring this campaign to life, that it's something a little bit different than where we're at right now, but more importantly, it brings that, that kind of mnemonic device. It brings a repeated element that we can put through either internal communications, external communications, anything we put out, we're able to latch onto something that then can be repeated and remembered and help breed that positive sentiment that we're looking for. So the overview here, St. Louis County Police Committed to Excellence. The campaign overview is that we're using that abbreviation of the CO to distinguish ourselves from the city, of which there is some, there's always a fuzzy line there in terms of notoriety and what people remember. But we want to drive awareness to the core strengths of the county and be able to use that county committed as the basis for where we build a lot of these messages. How that comes to life, you'll see some images here that are kind of mock-ups of how this campaign can live. You'll see some different things in terms of color too. The gold that has always been present in the brand is countered by this kind of more lively blue color. I'm not going to bore you with color theory when it comes to creative and design, but blue is trust. That's why you see a lot of things like, banks, institutions will use that to, it's a soothing color that is more approachable, while the gold and yellow denotes action. It's a little bit of both of that we're able to bring together in something that is also inviting. You won't see a lot of, more black, brown is a mix of a lot of colors. We wanted to focus on that blue and gold to be able to build a campaign that has these repeatable elements. So though the CO is the main nomenclature that we're building the campaign from in terms of what we're committed to, what we're committed to can change in that messaging, whether it be innovation in the technology we use or the way that we go about partnering with other municipalities or institutions. We can be committed to unity in the way that our officers interact with each other, in the way that we help one another out. And we can be committed to our community by having more community officers, having those things that aren't necessarily what people think of from a pop culture term of policing. We want to show a more emphasis of how we're looking at that, having those interactions within the community. We show things here like billboards, not because this is going to be a big outdoor campaign, but it's just showing how this campaign can live across different channels once it's launched. And I mentioned some things here already on the visual system, but we're not changing we're not changing the seal, we're not changing the logo, we're not changing the name of the department. We're changing how it's paired with the messaging. We want to make it something that's simple, easy to understand, and highly memorable. It's internal and external. So some ideas here in terms of how this campaign can work. One, just off the top in terms of external, would be making a county commitment. That commitment being, I mentioned that Gallup poll earlier and citing that 45% of people said that, only 45% of people said they were confident and that number was going down. We could work with a local news outlet to say, hey, we're committed over the next 2 years to beat the national average in terms of a local survey of confidence in our area. To basically say we're ready to put up or shut up, as it were, that we're going to do the work to raise the commitment above what the national level is because we care that much and we're innovative and we're ready to change things better. It's a little bit of just kind of putting money where your mouth is, but it's also connecting with local media for us to help get the message out on our behalf and be willing to show that we aren't just putting out our own words that we're not ready to back up. Other ways we can look at this is also, we already have engagement events that help the community connect with us on a one-on-one level. Things like coffee with a cop. You can see how the branding can come into that, even in the way that we advertise it to the community. There's something simple like that. But then other things like spotlights on community policing and the collaborative safety programs. There's a lot of area for us here to kind of get that branding out. Internally, it's one of those things that you may get sick of seeing, but that's okay, because it's not necessarily about all of us seeing it internally. It's repeated elements that people understand when they receive them where they are. Internally, there's some other things here we wanted to highlight too. The graphic here at the left, we know that there's new precincts being built. And one of the things that we noticed, some of the team from the agency we did ride-alongs. Throughout a day, we went to different precincts throughout the county, sat with officers, went on patrol with them, walked through the precincts. And one of the things we noticed were there were a few areas where there were brand elements in terms of posters of either, not so much slogans, maybe more black and white photos that were important moments in history or representing officers. There wasn't a lot there to breed that, kind of a brand message internally that would get people and the employees working there excited about the brand, or showing something they could visually look at and feel committed to. If you've ever played on a sports team, having a locker room that's, that has that brand to it, and they have the Play Like a Champions logo over the door that people can look at, it does something. It creates a further camaraderie and bond, and lets us get that brand message out internally that people can commit to. So it's one of the things that we were looking at suggesting is, as we're building a couple of these new precincts, to be looking at opportunities to bring the brand into that as something that officers and employees can see on a day-to-day basis and help live the brand. Along with things like these community policing programs and comprehensive wellness, to show that we care about our officers, and not only what they're doing physically in the field, but that their mental health is important as well. More internally, in terms of how we can show that for new recruits, things like committing to your success as a kind of 30, 60, 90-day guide of what to expect when you come on board with the department, while also being able to instill the values that we want them to know and learn, and create those touch points to say, we're not just throwing you out there to do the work on your own. We're committed to making you a successful officer and to your career that you've chosen to spend time with us. And highlighting those officers internally that have a commitment to communication. We know communication is vital in terms of performing police work, but then also communicating for a large department. How do we highlight individuals who do that well, and spotlight some of their internal efforts as well? So kind of a comprehensive thumbnail of what we're proposing for the campaign, and a little bit of a snapshot here of how it can live across either internal things like walls, to the website that welcomes users and lets them get more information, to the content we create. This is the type of touch points we want to make sure we're looking the same across all different platforms. We're creating that messaging that isn't just the same thing over and over. We're not saying it in the same way. We're able to get a variety of messages out in a way that's memorable and speaks to our community. In terms of measuring this, there are a few different touch points where we can look at in that 30, 60, 90 for new recruits. We can ask them if they feel like they're getting the message internally when we're communicating, either from the top down or from their superiors. We can do simple things like on the social media content that we put out, look at some of those engagement metrics and sentiment of how people respond. Weighting that, of course, with we know that most online respondents and engagement can be negative online, but taking a look at how people are responding to the content, and if they're finding it interesting and helpful, and considering the citizen perception survey with a little bit of a caveat of, we can benchmark against where we were in 2021 before the campaign started, and add some additional questions in terms of if they've seen the campaign, interacted with it, and how they feel about it. That can help baseline and show the movement and show the campaign as a success. Forgive me for talking fast, and you're at a limited amount of time. But I've got next steps. More importantly, I want to open to you all in case there are any questions we can answer to go over.
This is very impressive. My first question is, this branding, Is this developed based on what your study illustrated our department's culture currently is, or based on what the aspirational culture of the department is?
Yes, that is a great question. It is both. That's not a cop out, I swear. It is really, when we go into like the brand workshop where I think we had close to 20 people in this workshop. One of the first things we say is this is aspirational. Don't think of where you are now when we're talking about where our strengths lie. Where do you think we can be and we can make an effort? And one of the things that came back was modern policing was a big driver. And we're like, okay, what is that? Well, it means not approaching things from just an officer in the field. It means not just the technology you use, it's all of those things. How do we improve them, make them better, while also staying true to our traditions as a department that we know are important? So we're able to benchmark against the things we do really well. That perception of being a professional department, that was through more of the current brand lens. But when we're talking about how we're committing to things and going forward in the future, it's very much more aspirational in how we highlight those in the changes we make and how we show our innovation. And to continue to communicate that going forward, whether it be opportunities for news stories, when events happen, or the content that the information office here creates.
So I imagine this is not the first time that some of the people in this room or the department has seen this information. What was the buy-in? Like, what were the reactions?
I would say, and this is gonna sound like I'm too overwhelmingly positive to this. So as part of the process, we come back with multiple creative ideas that we craft, have those touch points. So it's not just us coming, to this board meeting and saying, hey guys, here's the first time everyone's seeing it. We needed to get buy-in. So we had multiple meetings with the chief and the team to say, here's what came back from the messaging side. Here's a review of the research that we performed. So we've had those different touch points. And then when it got to the point of saying, hey, here's all this all comes together, we had a few different options. And then there was Officer Panis would have to correct exactly what it was, but there was some internal shopping around of those, like, hey, how does this resonate with you all? And from my understanding, there was an overwhelmingly positive response to the Committed to Excellence.
Thank you for hurrying up. We're sorry that we put you on a bit of a time frame. We do have other questions, or at least some of us do. We know you're taking on. Sergeant, will you be available later in the meeting to answer some of those questions I will share with you so that you two can talk? I come out of the business background, as several of us do. Appreciated your measures, but we get into the measures like, did that increase revenue? Those are nice measures for what, but are there more substantive measures that we should expect as a department, as our people should expect as they go out there, or that they should expect internally, right? So those are external focusing measures. What are the internal focus measures, right? So when we come back to measures, that'll be a question, Sergeant, that I'd love to either know now or we would like to hear as we move forward. But thank you again for coming in on the accelerated approach. I think you saw our heads shaking up and down throughout most of it. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. Look forward to more conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner, along with the questions that the board has, we'll get to Sergeant Panis. They will be around. We still have time with them to help us roll this out when the time comes after those questions are answered. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Yep. All right. Logan? Oh, thank you. Thomas, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
We can. Very good. Let me do a quick introduction of you, and then we'll turn the podium over to you. Thomas is joining us from Maryland. Thomas Apt is the VRC founding director and associate research professor in the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice. Apt teaches studies and advises on the use of evidence-informed approaches for reducing violence in the United States and globally. He is the author of Bleeding Out: The Devastating Consequences of Urban Violence and a Bold New Plan for Peace in the Streets. Apt's work is cited in academic journals and featured in media outlets, including The Atlantic, The Economist, Atlantic, The Economist, and froze. New Yorker, New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, and NPR. His TED Talk is on community violence, has been viewed over 200,000 times. Thomas, thank you for joining us. Sorry that was a little more less personal, but we know you have a bit of a time constraint too this morning. So we're trying to, as you and I talk, we're trying to fit in a couple of things. So apologize for the impersonal response there at the beginning. Please take your time to talk us through what you and Lieutenant Colonel Cox and others have been working on. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to appear before you and talk about this exciting, promising new effort. I'm going to try to share my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Well, just to set the table, as we all know, in the region, there is a challenge related to violent crime. St. Louis is the 11th, ranks 11th in terms of violent crime rates, the metropolitan statistical area. But it's unfortunately even worse and number 4 when it comes to homicide specifically. And homicide has the most devastating social, human, and economic impact of any other form of violent crime, and indeed crime generally. And I don't need to explain to this board or to any of the audience members the tremendous impact that serious violent crime and homicide have to the region in terms of the social impact, the commercial and economic impact. And it's not just the city, of course. It's the metropolitan statistical area of the region as a whole. And so in response to this, we convened a practicum on partnership-based violence. And maybe before jumping in, this was the end result of a long feeling out process. The East-West County Council of Governments reached out to me maybe almost a year ago to get advice and counsel on how the region might respond to this issue of violence. We agreed that we should consider working together, but we should have some type of sort of trial run. And so we had a summit in May that was attended by many stakeholders across the region, local electeds, service providers, public health officials, activists, advocates, and others, of course, law enforcement. And I think based on the results of that summit, which people felt very excited and encouraged by, we decided to proceed with this practicum, which is a 5-day session really intended to both introduce key stakeholders to the latest in violence reduction, but also then to come out with a very concrete plan for action. And in our rollout, or in our preparations for the practicum, we were told again and again by stakeholders, look, this region has been planned to death. We're going to need something very concrete and very actionable. And we really listened and we heard that. And I'd like to think that we're successful, and that's why we're here now. So to actually dive a bit into the practicum, on Monday the 4th, we brought together a very large group of diverse stakeholders from across the region. We unveiled a regional homicide analysis, which looked at about a year's worth of homicide data, not just in the city, but in the county and in St. Clair County as well. 90% of all homicides in the region happen in those 3 counties. We discussed key principles for violence reduction and how we might respond to the challenges that were framed in this analysis. And then we answered key questions from the audience. After that, we broke into a small group for a working session. And this was a sort of deputy level convening. It had representatives from St. Louis County. Beth Orwick participated, Juan Cox participated, and a number of other stakeholders. And during these sessions, participants learned about key anti-violence strategies from leading experts from all across the country. We zoomed in really a who's who in terms of violence reduction to talk with participants, answer their questions, and to really talk about, the right fit and what might work and might not work in the region. After those sessions, we participants put their head together and put together a draft action plan. The next day, we convened another large public meeting to report out on the results. And on January 10th, we memorialized that meeting and distributed a draft action plan for review and comment. If any of you want to see that draft, I'm about to summarize it for you. It's publicly available, and we'd be happy to share it with you. This is a list of the working session participants, and I think it's really remarkable for its diversity. You see folks from inside and outside government. You see folks from law enforcement. You see folks from community, and you see a real regional diversity here. And so we were proud of this group and what it, and you know, there are a lot of different perspectives represented in this book, in this group, but we were able to come together. So what did we learn primarily through this homicide analysis? We learned that across the region, a very small number of group-involved individuals contribute disproportionately to violence. And, you know, we use the term group rather than sort of gang, because group sort of encompasses a lot more of the informality of a lot of this group-related activity, and it's a more flexible term. But there's, 0.16% of the region's population is affiliated with some form of criminal group, and yet they account for as much as 58% of total homicides. Now, we know for certain that it's at least 17%, it's probably another 13%, and I would suspect that a large share of that 28% as well is also group involved. And the point here is that there's a relatively small number of people across the region who have a very large disproportionate share of a disproportionate impact on this violence and homicide problem. Another thing we learned was that suspects and victims of homicides are both older and more embedded in the criminal justice system than expected. Many people believe that homicide and gun violence is a youth problem, but in this region and in other regions that we've studied, this is actually not the case. The average age, as you can see here, of victims and suspects for that year's worth of homicide data was 31. Much older than expected. When we did this analysis in Knoxville, it was an average age of 27. When we did it in Boston, it was 29. In DC, it's 28. So it's often, this is a phenomenon we see all around the country. And then you can't see the chart here, but what we found is that both the victims and the suspects had long criminal histories. And as you can see in the bottom from the screen, for victims and suspects, they had a total average of 13 arrests, prior arrests, before being involved in a homicide. So we learned something new, or some of us learned something new about who was driving this problem. Another key thing that we learned is that homicides are not everywhere. They're certainly not everywhere in the region, and they're not even everywhere in the city. Homicides concentrate in micro locations, and it's important to note that these locations don't respect jurisdictional borders. What you see here is a snapshot of homicides across that are, as you can see, right along the border of St. Louis City and St. Louis County. And so what you can see is that, there's a lot of overlap here. And when we looked at the homicide data, we found lots of overlap in terms of jurisdictions, meaning that if you looked at the homicides in St. Louis County, a lot of those involved folks who had an address in the city, and vice versa. A lot of the homicides in the city had people involved who had addresses in the county. And not just St. Louis County, but St. Clair County and other counties as well. We also learned that there's a small set of evidence-informed strategies that can make a difference when you implement them the right way. And so we talked about people-based strategies, place-based strategies, and behavior-based strategies. And we talked about having a balanced approach that combined prevention, intervention, and tough enforcement. So ultimately, after learning all these things, the Practicum Working Group members recommended a new regional strategy for addressing serious violence in the region. They also recommended creating a new collaborative effort to push this strategy forward. The mission was to save lives in the region, and to do that by reducing homicides and shootings by 20% over 3 years. And the way to do that, the working group believed, was to engage those at the highest risk for violence, working to keep them safe, alive, and free, but also holding those who shoot and kill fully accountable. So what were the sort of key elements of this action plan? The first was focused deterrence. And this is a regional focused deterrence strategy. I've got some quotes here. This is perhaps the single most effective anti-violence strategy available today in the country. It's no panacea. It doesn't work all the time, but numerous academic and scientific bodies have examined it and said this strategy more often than not generates the largest impacts. And here you can see some of the results. In Indianapolis, there was a 34% reduction in homicides. Stockton, 42% reduction in gun homicides. New Haven, 37% reduction in homicides. And so on in Chicago, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. But that's not enough. One of the things that the Practicum Working Group really wanted to emphasize is that we need to have a balanced approach. We need to balance tough enforcement with robust supports and services that are fully informed by cognitive behavioral theory and other behavior modification strategies. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that if you look at the science of what actually works to change the behavior of people who are involved in gun violence, it's not just about giving them jobs or helping them get an education or these things. If you don't actually directly work on how they think and how they behave and all of their untreated trauma, it doesn't matter the supports you give them. You ultimately have to train them to make better decisions so that they can make use of these opportunities. And as you can see, cognitive behavioral theory, or CBT, is supported by a very strong base of evidence of the anti-violence interventions that don't involve law enforcement. This has the strongest track record. And as you can see here, in Chicago, we saw a 65% reduction in shootings and homicides. Again, in Chicago, with a different program, a 50% reduction in violent crime arrests. And then you have good work being done in Chelsea and Baltimore as well. Finally, the working group thought about, well, okay, we want to reach out to these highest risk individuals and groups. We want to tell them that we know what they're doing. We want to insist that they stop what they're doing, and that if they continue, they'll be targeted for law enforcement action. But we also want to make sure that they know that if they're willing to change, that these services are available. But these are some of the most disconnected people in our region. They don't trust folks in government. They don't trust service providers and these things. So how can we actually make sure that they really understand what services are available to them, and we give them every opportunity to use them? And that's where street outreach came in, to ensure that the supports and services reach those who need them most. And as you can see, street outreach has a more mixed record of effectiveness, but when it's done right, it can reduce gun violence. And here you can see in New York, there was a 37% decline in gun injuries and a 63% reduction in shooting victimizations. In Philadelphia, there was a 30% reduction in shootings. And in LA, there was a 30% reduction in retaliatory violence. So these are the big three strategies implemented together all at once to make a big difference in the region. And we believe with these three strategies, we have the best shot possible of reaching that goal, which is a 20% reduction in homicides and shootings over 3 years. So how are we going to organize this? It's not easy. And so the Practicum Working Group recommended creating a new regional anti-violence hub to support the recommended strategies, a place that could support the coordination and collaboration that's going to be necessary to really have a regional approach. And the working group members agreed that this had to bring together key stakeholders from inside and outside government and especially impacted community members to push this work forward. The participation in this hub had to sort of mirror the membership of the practicum. And we've already gotten a lot of support for this idea. The East-West Gateway Council of Governments just recently unanimously voted to support the creation of the hub, and that the East-West Gateway is going to be responsible for the initial implementation efforts for creating this hub. We've gotten strong support from the business community. Greater St. Louis Inc., the Municipal League, and the Regional Business Council have all agreed to provide early support. And we at the Violence Reduction Center will continue to provide guidance and support as well. And perhaps I should have said this earlier. Let me tell you a little bit about the VRC. You heard a little bit about what I do, but the Violence Reduction Center at the University of Maryland, which has the #1 criminology program in the country, is dedicated to saving lives by stopping violence using the best science available. And we work directly with cities that we believe have a chance to produce transformative life-saving change. And one of the things that's unusual about the VRC is because we're funded philanthropically, everything we do for free. So you can't hire the VRC because we only work with cities or with regions that we feel are committed. And after our extensive vetting process, folks in the region vetting us and us vetting the support in the region, we decided to move forward together. So as long as the region is committed to these strategies, the VRC will be with you every step of the way. So initially, this collaborative effort, this hub, will provide key technical and logistical support to ensure that this plan, this 3-part plan that we're talking about, moves forward. So all of the sort of normal things you'd expect, convening regular meetings, making sure the emails get out, engaging experts, provide training and technical assistance, tracking data, sharing it with stakeholders. All of the things, all of the sort of glue work that you need in order to have a healthy collaborative effort. Our next steps are to take the draft action plan that I've just described to you, but is also available in writing, and to memorialize it. We've already done that. Then we have launched a small regional implementation team. We're pleased to have Juan Cox and Beth Orwick on that team. That team has started work. We're in the process of, as we're doing right now, of sharing this action plan and getting feedback. We want to make a point that this plan is not finalized and that we welcome feedback and comments so that we can further refine the support. Our goal is to launch a regional advisory board to provide oversight to this effort and to convene that first meeting in April of this year or possibly May of this year, and then to approve a final plan and then jump right into implementation. And once we start doing that, we hope to actually have boots on the ground and our first participants engaged by fall or a little bit later this year. I will stop there and answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Thomas. Questions from the board?
Thomas, thank you for presenting to us. That was very informative. And thank you for everything that you're doing through your VRC. When you say participants engaged, are you speaking of the community members who are going out to the population who are members of these groups that we're identifying, or are the participants the group members themselves that we're trying to influence through these 3 strategies?
Great question. Yeah, and that's an important thing to clarify. No, when we're talking about engaging participants in the fall, what we mean is the participants would be those highest risk individuals and groups. And we want to engage them both with law enforcement and with services and support, and with the street outreach workers, as we said.
When you speak about street outreach workers, who will they be?
So street outreach workers, to be effective, have to be credible members of the community. They have to be people that can talk to folks who are deeply disconnected from formal sources of authority. So they're often people who are from the same communities as those who are at risk for violence. They're often people who maybe at a previous time in their life were involved in crime or violence and have decided to, make it good and by changing their ways. So there are people who have credibility with this group, and so that's who they are.
So how will they be recruited? How will they be identified and trained?
So there are a number of street outreach groups that are already operating in the city and in the county, and there's a base of talent and commitment that we can already draw upon. But I do believe that they're going to need additional specialized training. And so one of the things that that the hub will do will be providing this training. And so saying, you've been involved in this work before, you generally know, but to work in this specific initiative, we have a very specific approach, and we want you to understand how to be successful.
Thank you.
How do we ensure that this type of process yields benefits for years to come? A lot of the statistics that you cited seem to be phenomenal, but take Chicago, for instance, they seem to have slid back to their old ways. Instead of, I'm not interested as much in 2024 or 2025. I want to make St. Louis a great place to live, for decades. So how do we do that with your program?
It's a great question, and it's really the hardest part of this work. A lot of folks ask, when I talk about this work, both in the region and around the country, the challenge is not actually reducing violence. There's a lot of strategies that you can use, the strategies that we've talked with, that are reliably reducing violence next year, the year after that. The challenge is sustaining it. And you're right. And this is the biggest challenge. And one of the issues is that these anti-violence programs are often victims of their own success. Violence goes down, people think about other things, support for the efforts goes away, people leave, et cetera, et cetera. So what we believe that will create a level of sustainability is having this hub year after year, bringing the region together, saying this remains important, and to keep the sustainability. So that's what we're hoping is going to be different here.
Thank you.
So I have a few questions, and again, we realize that you're on a bit of a time frame, so thank you for that.
This is important. I'm here to answer all your questions.
Thank you. The first one is extraordinarily tactical, and I apologize for that, but can we get a copy of your slide deck? There was a lot of data in there. The board's making eye contact like, boy, we're trying to assimilate all of this right now. If you could send us a copy of that slide deck, we will certainly discuss this further as we go forward. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Mike asked a similar question to mine, and I'll maybe piggyback on the front of it and piggyback on the back of it. The 20% over 3-year reduction, where did the 20% come from? All the numbers you presented up there were well above 20%, and yet we're at 20%. Why only 20% for the St. Louis community?
Well, I think it's important. So first of all, I want to point out that there's no science to setting these goals. You want to set a goal that is, achievable, but also, a bit of a stretch goal. And I think that the most important thing in response to the previous question is to reduce violence by, a little bit every year, Because if you reduce violence, let's say by 10% every year for 5 years, you have almost a 50% reduction in violence across the region. And so what we're trying to do is basically under-promise and over-deliver. We believe that we can have results that are in excess of that, but we also want to maintain our political support, and we want to sort of be modest in our goals so that we can be more sustainable over time.
I'll personally respect that. I get that philosophy. There's also philosophy of set it out a little bit further, because then you'll work harder to attain it, right? And that's why I asked the question. If we say 20% and we get 20%, then we start to rest on our laurels. We hit our goal, right? If you put it out at 40%, which is what some of the numbers that we saw up there in different things, we'll work hard to get to 40%. Now, again, not a right philosophy, not a wrong philosophy, just differing philosophies. And this is the second half. I was going to ask the same question. So what happens after 3 years? Both from a measurement standpoint and a progression standpoint. The numbers you provided, some of them were back to 2016. So you've seen this apex and then this slide back. What was going to be different? You answered, we believe, the collective you believe that this hub will be a key component of it. Are there other aspects of what you've learned over the last 7 or 8 years that would also be useful to St. Louis beyond
Absolutely.
Just a hub?
Absolutely. And I think what we see is we see this plan as the sort of strongest first step possible. But there are other strategies that we would hope to weave in over time. For instance, one of the things that we talked a lot about is, we're focused very much on the highest risk people and groups with this strategy. But there's a lot of place-based strategies, location-based strategies, and good work that's being done in the region that we simply sort of couldn't wrap our arms around in the short frame of time. And so what we hope is that the strategy will evolve over time. We think this is the strongest first step, but we should revisit this plan in a year and, of course, in 3 years and say, okay, this part of it has been going extremely well. This part hasn't. We're going to change that. We want to add this component, drop that component. So, I think that what we're hoping is that we're creating a sound structure that can evolve to meet the needs of the region over time. And so 3 years from now, I'm almost certain that, we'll want to revisit this plan and tweak it, here and there.
Thank you. And this is intended to be complimentary, I believe. So I may not word it that correctly, but just here, that's the intent of it. Is it safe to say that the process and the program initiatives that we're doing in St. Louis are generally similar to the other places you've implemented this, but specifically tailored to the St. Louis community? In other words, we're learning off of the lessons. We're not trying something completely new. We're building on the lessons you all have learned in the last 6 or 7, 8, 10 locations that you've tried this in.
I think that's right, and that's a fair characterization. None of these, we are not recommending strategies that have never been tried before or that don't have evidence of effectiveness. But what is unique, to my knowledge, is this regional approach and this very intentional effort to have both vigorous enforcement and vigorous support at the same time. And so what I would say is, no, none of this is absolutely new, but this is a innovative take on these previous strategies. And I think that, it will get a lot of attention nationally, and people will be excited about watching the progress of this effort.
Thank you for cleaning up my awkward question. I appreciate that.
Not at all.
Other questions?
Yes, I have another question. Back to the numbers. So you show the cities with a 30% reduction and so on. And as Brian asked about the 20% projection for this area, the question is, those numbers for the other locations, were those numbers reflective of the outcomes, or were those actual projections that were met?
No, those are all outcomes that have been carefully measured by independent researchers.
So in other words, those locations may have set a lower goal, but or how does that work? How did that work in terms of those numbers?
I don't know what their goal setting process was, but that's what actually happened in
Okay.
those jurisdictions. And that's the actual numbers of victimizations or homicides or other things that were reduced. But I do want to point something out. I was moving fast, and I can't present all of the detail, in one place. But these are reductions, not necessarily citywide reductions. So they may be reductions in the program area or among the participants, which gets to that other question of, we're not suggesting that, and so I don't want to suggest that these interventions produce citywide reductions in all of these jurisdictions, but they were successful in the areas and with the people that they worked with, which goes back to the question of why the 20%. Well, to have a 20% reduction in homicides across the region, we're going to have to be very successful with this highest risk group. So we're not going to have we shouldn't have a 20% reduction in violence among these high risk individuals and groups. We're going to need a larger group to have a regional impact. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Thomas, it looks like from our perspective, maybe we'll offer any questions from the group. We know you have to run, so we appreciate that. Any questions from anyone in the audience? Chief, your team, anything else? All right. Thomas, thank you very much for what you're doing for our community on behalf of the entire board. This police department, sounds like it's many or most of the police departments and law enforcement officials throughout the community. Thank you very much for what you're teaching us to do, and we look forward to a long and successful relationship together. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to present to you, and I also just want to thank the St. Louis County Police Department, specifically Colonel Gregory, for his support. And we look forward to working with the police department closely in the future.
Thank you, Thomas.
Just a couple of things. I won't be very long. We have an insight onto the street outreach people. I don't know if you guys know James Clark, but that's what he does. Conflict resolution. He gets out. He knows the companies that we can hook up with to make sure that we got street outreach people. A lot of these things that they're asking us to do, according to Colonel Cox and according to all of us, we do already. This is the big thing that we have to do, is that we have to develop street outreach people. There's a position that's got to be hired by Dr. Page's office that's going to control all of this so that he can get Beth Barwick out of it. Colonel Cox will remain a part of it. Obviously, I'll be a part of this, but there's a position that we got to hire, so that's going to take us some time. The rollout dates, as he said, will coming up. Well, according to the last meeting, they're probably a long ways off than what he even said. But anyway, just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you. And one other thing to build in here, and we'll come back to this afterwards. So Colonel Cox, if you don't mind sticking around after we let some of the family members go who didn't come to hear all this, right? Hopefully you got value out of it. You came to the awards and commendations for your people. There was a comment he made in the very end about the St. Louis community. They are, and Colonel Cox, I look at you and when I say this, they are very cognizant of the fact that we have multiple municipalities. That's just on the Missouri side. You build that in on the Illinois side. They know how fractured this city is for all its good and all its bad. And that's his comment about it's a little different here. They're not using the same plan because you can't just implement it and say St. Louis or New York City, right? Or Chicago. It has to be across multiple municipalities, 2 states, and everything else. So you all are working through that. And that may be the biggest thing that we do together is come together. So very big step. Right. Thank you. So everybody can take a deep breath. We hurried through the first hour and 10 minutes because we needed to. Everybody take a deep breath and let's get on to the fun stuff. Not that, again, that wasn't important, but we'd love to hear about the awards and the commendations and everything else you have to present. So thank you much.
Foundation for Police Officer Roger Holmes. Roger. Gregory France.
Mhm.
Smile, smile. You should smile.
Police Officer Grant Steiger. Grant. Captain Reuter, why don't you come up? Oh, I'm sorry. Captain, when you come, tell us about these young men.
Morning, everybody. Chairman, board members.
Morning.
Ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to talk about the three officers that are standing up here, the outstanding job they did on May 24th of last year in the city of Jennings on the midnight watch. They had an armed carjacking that occurred, and the dispatcher put the information out, and within 10 seconds, Officer Holmes spotted the vehicle and got behind it, attempting to stop it. The vehicle failed to yield, and a pursuit ensued. Officer Steiger and Officer Kranz assisted. It was a 16-mile pursuit that went through the city of St. Louis and ended up in the state of Illinois. Upon exiting interstate in East St. Louis, the car hit a median curb and was disabled. The occupants of the vehicle got out and ran on foot. The officers gave chase and apprehended the individuals without incident and recovered the firearm and was used in the commission of crime. Did an outstanding job. Thank you very much, and great work.
Greg, come up. Got anybody here with
To my wife, Kayla, and my 2-year-old son.
you? One that's got that strong right on.
And then I got my brother back there.
How could you forget him?
Yeah, he's back there.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Roger.
Anybody here with you?
My wife.
Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. My wife, Bridget, how are you? Thank you for being here. All right. Great job. Chief's commendation to Police Officer Heather Harris. Thank you. Lieutenant Schaefer, come on up, talk to us about Heather.
Members of the Board of Police Commissioners, Chief Gregory, Department Family and Guest. Today, Officer Heather Harris is being awarded the Chief's Commendation. Officer Heather Harris is an experienced officer, 8 years of experience, having served in the Afton Southwest Precinct, Bureau of Drug Enforcement, and currently assigned to the North County Precinct. With over 8 years of experience, she continues to possess unparalleled initiative and drive while managing a high call volume. In late September and beginning in late September and concluding in October, Officer Heather Harris initiated and followed through on a complex investigation that produced outstanding results. Without a doubt, had an positive impact on public safety in St. Louis County. On the evening of September 24th, 2023, the North County Precinct received 3 calls in quick succession. The first call was a vehicle that was stolen, and inside this vehicle was a puppy. Second vehicle was another vehicle stolen. Both these vehicles were found abandoned and recovered a few hours later with the puppy still missing. There was a third call, and these all occurred within about 3 hours of each other, 2 stolen vehicles. The third call was a vehicle break-in where a firearm and a laptop was stolen. Officer Harris is the one that responded to the first call, the stolen vehicle with the puppy inside. That's what happened that evening. About 2 days later, on September 26, 2023, Officer Heather Harris heard a call come out for a armed robbery with a stolen vehicle. She was able to get behind that vehicle and a pursuit ensued. The vehicle was eventually found abandoned in the city of St. Louis. In that vehicle was physical evidence that identified a suspect. Officer Heather Harris used that physical evidence and started digging into that suspect and finding out information. This suspect was part of a larger group that was responsible for hundreds of car thefts, violent assaults, carjackings, and robberies. Using that information, she continued her investigation. And, it's very important in police work about information sharing. And Officer Heather Harris found out who the suspect was based on the physical evidence and was able to continue the investigation, communicate with other officers and detectives from other agencies. She was actually able to connect the suspect in the pursuit from September 26, 2023 to the 3 incidents on September 24th, 2023. What really connected this was a photograph of the stolen missing puppy related to the pursuit that she had. So she was able to connect these 3 crimes along with the pursuit and armed robbery. Knowing that she found this photo with the missing puppy and the suspect, she had to act quickly and communicated with task force officers from federal agencies, neighboring police departments, and detectives from our own police department. Recognizing the need to act quickly, they conducted a search warrant and found a lot of items. So in this search warrant, they found fully automatic capable firearms when they executed the search warrant, stolen law enforcement equipment, a sizable amount of fentanyl, stolen cars, key fobs, and I'm happy to say that the puppy was also found and returned to the owner. So good job. Officer Heather Harris's determination and intelligent performance assisted in the clearance of multiple felonies. Her hard work and dedication to the citizens of St. Louis County is invaluable and to be commended. Great job, Heather.
Thank you very much. Very nicely done, man. Very nicely done.
Brother, you got anybody here with you? You do not?
Emergency.
Take care. All right. Life-saving award to Sergeant Henry Vincent. Thank you. Captain Cavaletti.
Board. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're here to talk about Aaron Vincent. Aaron's a sergeant in robbery homicide unit. He's one of our 2 sergeants up there in the squad. Does a fantastic job for us up there. But that's not why we're here today. Today, talking about a day in June of 2023 when Aaron was working a approved secondary job at Busch Stadium for the St. Louis Cardinals. During his shift there, he received a call along with other officers for a female who was having a mental crisis on the 3rd level of the stadium. So Aaron, along with the other officers, went up to help, located the female, and did what they could to help her at that time. And they were escorting her to an ambulance. They were going to escort her down to an ambulance down at the main level. She did not want to do it at that time. She quickly jumped from the officers and ran to the side of the rail and threw her leg over the rail. She was going to jump from the rail. Aaron was right behind her at the time and was able to catch her and bring her back in before she was able to hurt herself. The security officer on scene there said that if it was not for Aaron there, she would have jumped. So I think once again, this shows for the officers, whether they're working a beat, they're working a secondary job, they're off duty, they're always looking out to help the community the best they can. And Aaron, I'm very proud of you. So,
Oh, man. That's
Wonderful. Thank you.
Where do you guys have to come from? Kansas City. So you're missing the parade today, huh?
Missed the parade.
Thanks for being
Captain
here.
John Wheeler. Don't tell me Captain's gonna do work on this.
Good morning, board. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse my voice. Tony and Francis will probably be sick after I'm done talking. Gives me great pleasure to present the life-saving award to Captain John Wheeler. I'm not positive, but he may be the only captain on the police department with a life-saving award. Do you have 2 now?
Yes, sir.
Wow, he's special.
We knew that
I
already.
got 2 versions of this. I got the version when Captain Wheeler called me, told me what happened. I got the version that Sergeant John Karate drafted for me to say today.
Can we hear them both?
After hours.
Closed session, material closed session.
John was on vacation down in the great state of Florida with his lovely wife, and they decided to take one of those sunset dinner cruises. So they hopped aboard the boat, went out to sail, having a few beverages, when they heard a lot of commotion, a lot of yelling, help, help. They need somebody to do CPR. Captain Wheeler walked over near the bar area and noticed an individual lying there unconscious. So he immediately began to give CPR to that individual. He yelled out, "Someone get the AED device that we're trained to say when we're doing CPR." And they advised him that they did not have an AED device, and he was at least 30 minutes out before the boat would come back and dock. So Captain Wheeler, along with another crew, I guess, what do you call that? Another guest began to do CPR for an extended period of time until the boat got back to dock, where the emergency personnel were waiting to assist. And obviously, the young lady survived because John wouldn't be getting this award. But to do CPR for 30 minutes, tag team CPR, is a testament to John's preparedness, his leadership. He did a great job jumping in and taking lead in that situation. And I can only imagine that probably the greatest thing you can do in life is to save a life. And that is indeed what Captain Wheeler did on that day. So, congratulations.
Thank you,
Captain.
I'll remember that. Yeah. Yes, yes, we were. And I knew I do. I have my wife, who was my witness.
There's Alan.
My son Jack is here. He'll be up here next. Absolutely. Thanks, Chief.
Next up, Life Saving Award, Police Officer John Wheeler II. See, this runs in the family. Nah. Captain, you're up, sir.
Young John Wheeler, 2.0 version of his father. We have children, those of us who have children, we want our children to be better than us, and you are by far better. I knew your mom, she was a wonderful woman, she taught me compassion, professionalism. It brings us to our night in 2023, when he used that compassion that his mom taught him. He did good, he ended up encountering an individual who wanted to take his own life. Underneath the Jefferson Barracks Bridge, standing at the cliff's edge, and it's hard to explain how good of a job somebody does. All that done was his words. He provided an ear individual o'clock at night. It goes on for a while. There's no kung fu or anything like that that's used to get this individual away from the cliff's edge. Just seems that his mom is dead. I'm proud of you. Chief is very proud of you.
Can we beg a minute? Can we get the two Wheeler men up here with for a picture? And maybe Alan, can you come up with them too? We'd love to have all three of you in a picture up here.
That's why we want her in there, Captain. She needs to be in the middle.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you to the Wheeler family.
Okay.
Steve, why don't you come on up?
Members of the board, I'd like to introduce Chief Larry Hampton from the University City Police Department. He's been nominated to be on the board of managers at the academy. Member.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for bearing with us this morning. We know we have important things to do, so we appreciate you being here. We look forward to voting on you here a little bit later. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Nice to meet you.
Good. So family and friends, thank you very much for being here to support your officers and your family today. But it's not just today's support, it's the support you've provided over a lifetime. We are so grateful for all that support. We're so grateful for what your sons and daughters and brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews do for our community. Hopefully today gave you a feel for just how important they are and how much we value them and how proud we are. Thank you for being here. You are welcome to leave. And since you've sat through an hour and a half of this, we're about to get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of our police department. So please feel free to leave. But again, thank you very much. Not you. Meaning you're not willing to go.
You think we're actually just starting?
You look very nice and pink today. Very appropriate for Valentine's Day.
You're embarrassing her.
I am.
She's like,
Intentionally.
she's like-
And you'll be around a little bit later to talk about the branding organization too. Thank you. Yes, sir. Of course. Guten Tag, Joanna. Ja, willkommen. Thank you. We love the introduction.
She's so funny.
She's looking around like, huh? That was neat. Diverse day we're having, Chief. Yes, but no.
Yeah, understood. At that age.
Yes. I think I've been that age for a few years. Like 20, sorry. Yes.
Okay, first up, Deputy Chief Ludwig is going to take the place of Terry Moran. She had something that she had to leave.
Excuse me for just a moment. All right, you guys crank the questions up.
All right, good morning, everyone. Terry had a family medical emergency, so you get me instead. In the interest of me not looking foolish, I'll take exactly one question.
There's 5 supports to
You
that.
can put your minds together and decide what you want to answer. So she left me her things. I've looked at it. I'll do the best to answer whatever you might ask. If not, I'll write them down and I'll get Terry to follow up with you. So I know she gave you a document based on the board meeting from last time for a budget comparison of 2022, 2023, and 2024. And I assume at this point you've all had a chance to review that. She wanted to know if you have any questions. I looked at it. What it doesn't do for me is kind of compare the budgeted line for that year to the expenditure line. So if that's what you're looking for, that's the first thing I saw when I looked at it. We can get that for you, but I don't have it right now. So I can't answer any questions about what was budgeted versus what was spent in terms of 2022 and 2023. So any questions that I might be able to answer or write down for Terry based on that?
Apparently not.
But I think we're aligned with your thought that it would be helpful to have 2022 budget, 2022 actual.
And I wasn't at the last board meeting because I was at a deposition, but she asked me, she was a little confused about what it was we were after, we being the board. So I'll follow up with you either in closed session or after the fact to determine exactly what it is that you're looking for, if it's more than that, and we'll have those answers for you.
And she's welcome to reach out at any time to any one of us to get clarification on that. She doesn't have to wait the board meeting. But may I add one more thing to that? Maybe the largest variables, both favorable and unfavorable to budget, right? We can scan the numbers, but if she can tell us those maybe top 3 or 4 in each of the 2 categories and some rationale around it, right? So we have overtime skyrocketed, yet the overtime hours were down. So there's some things in there we'd like to hear a little bit more about. But again, just the highlights and the lowlights would be helpful.
I also have one question that I'll understand if you can't answer. So when we're comparing our actuals to our budgets, how easy is it to move available funds from salaries to overtime to intermittent, among the human accounts?
Some are very easy and, right? Or if I say something wrong. Some are very easy, some are more difficult. So if the codes are very similar, then it's very easy because you can move them within that. If it's something completely different, say we want a capital item, then it requires an ordinance over with county council to move those funds.
Okay, and when you say numbers, you mean object number or account numbers?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That wasn't too bad.
You did great.
Okay, so in terms of the 2023 budget, the numbers that you see in the memo are going to differ a little bit from the final numbers, which actually closed on Friday. So she doesn't have those available for you yet, but she will by the next meeting. She told me that the surplus that we're going to return to county government is about $3.5 million. I know what your next question is. I don't have your answer. She'll have that answer for you next week. I assume a large portion of that is coming out of payroll, but I don't know without looking at it. And in terms of the 2024 budget, the same questions that you routinely ask. It's only been 1.5 pay periods, so we're on target, but it's a very narrow window of time for the budget. So that's all she gave me. Any other questions I can answer for you? No. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good job, Terry. I know the big thing that you put on me was make sure that we didn't return any money. And however that happens, that we return any money at the end of the year, I have no idea. Terry will explain that to us, the way they work their budget out every year, that money that's returned, not just from us, but from other departments within the department. So in St. Louis County. So maybe she can explain that to us.
We hope she can. Thank you, Chief.
Captain?
Morning.
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 Get this pulled up here. Uh-oh. All right, so I'm going to do crime statistics as we always do, and then roll in after that. There's a few things at the end of this slide presentation that the board had asked about either last month or the previous month that we'll touch on, and then we'll roll into the strategic plan update. I also will only be fielding one question today.
Thanks.
So we'll go ahead and get started here. I want to preface this whole crime slide deck by saying it was well documented last year that January of 2023 was extremely high. So numbers, as we look throughout the whole thing, I'm not just pointing out this notable events tab, but everything we would think would have been down, and it was, because January of 23 was an outlier when we look at the last 5 years as far as high numbers. So citizen complaints have been equal as it shows across the board for the past now 3 years in a row in January. So our internal investigations, I want to point out, we're actually collecting that a little bit differently. So, and I'll explain that. So we had 3 received last month, which, as it says here, results in almost that 80% decrease. But we changed the way that we're going to collect these numbers this year. So previously, prior to this year, any received from the past year, so December, for instance, of 22, that were late to the game. So they may have been received in January, but they occurred in December of last year. So previously, from the past year, they weren't in the system by year end. We were counting them when they were assigned to BPS. So this was originally determined with BPS. I say we, but really the analysts found it a little bit messy. And so we're counting the ones moving forward just received in January. To give you the note though, if that same method was used for last year, it would have been 8. So instead of 14, there would have been 8 to 3, which still would have been a decrease of 62.5%. So hope that makes sense. So moving forward, because that's kind of the only overlap, we kind of clean up the year, but then we have things that may have occurred. There may have been internal investigations, vehicle accidents, for instance, that may have occurred the last 3 days of the year. Well, they're not entered by the sergeants and stuff, and then BPS doesn't receive it until January. So that's kind of a clarification on that number and why the larger discrepancy. Our uses of force exactly even compared to last year, the 39. Accidents saw the 35% decrease compared year to date, which obviously is good to start. Vehicle pursuits, not a whole lot to note. I know it's 20%, but it's only one total. Only the 6 pursuits last month, we had 140 documented failure to yields. And when I touch on the failure to yields, well, first of all, almost 85% of all pursuits began in either North County or Jennings so far this year. And then on the failure to yields, the 140 occurring this month. I'll go ahead and try to answer the question that I know is coming as best I can. 140 to 418 is quite a bit. I don't have an answer for it yet. And we actually met yesterday. When I say we, myself, Allie, and Abby, and talked about it. We're going to look obviously over the next few months. And now I do know that there was a couple of special enforcements in January of 23 that weren't, so that would indicate a little bit higher number. I don't know about the 200 and whatever that is, 70 roughly discrepancy there. So I'll keep you posted as we move through to kind of see how those numbers move.
Captain, we go back to internal investigation. So carrying forward throughout the course of the next 10 months, we should always assume that there's going to be 6. The restated number will be 6 less because those came from 2022, but we're in 2023. We'll always be 6 behind because that's what we showed in January. Is that correct? All right. In 2022, right. All right, thank you.
And then here again is the heat map, just showing where the failure to yields occur. Of the 140, 50% of those in the 1st or 8th. And then as you can see here, the 4th precinct obviously also has a high number in the double digits. So if you include the 4th precinct, we've got 70% of all failure to yields in either 1, 8, or 4 as far as precincts go. This is for the month for the department. That arrests 884 is extremely high number. It increased from 736 in December of 23. So that increased by 148, almost 150 arrests. Gun seized was increased up to 80. And then the DWI reports just slightly down from December, 59. It was 67 last month in December. 51% of those, by the way, DWIs written from our highway safety unit. So when we look at crimes against persons overall, obviously we're down. The homicides are up. This is again just for January. So that was 4 year to date compared to 2. And again, this is in unincorporated and or our contract municipalities is what this slide shows. The aggravated assaults by hand, feet, and fists up 150%. Again, it's January. The numbers aren't extremely large, but overall aggravated assaults down almost 20% is good. And then again, the aggravated assaults with firearms being down 50%. Another thing to look at a positive. Human trafficking, we talked about almost every month last year and explained that for whatever reason, it spiked early because there was just a few investigations that resulted in a lot of arrests or a lot of. So human trafficking was seen as an increase for most months last year. And this is a prime example because 15 of those offenses in January last year compared to none so far this year. And then crimes against persons, as I already pointed out, is overall down 22%. Further into the homicide infographics, this is again
homicides investigated by Crimes Against Persons. So they had 6 homicides total this month. 4 of those were, as you already saw, within St. Louis County Police patrolled areas, and 2 were in Moline Acres. The 6 homicides for Crimes Against Persons for the year. It's the start of the new year, but all of those were from firearms. Crimes against property, robberies down 50%, most notably with the firearm down 35.7%, and the strong arm down a little bit over 71%. So every single category is down compared to January of last year, which again, as I've noted, and just kind of want to keep putting in context, January of last year started everything very high. So this was expected just on a trend basis, and crimes against property down almost 40% overall. Same thing as I said last year when the numbers were actually a lot higher. Let's see where it shakes out as we continue to move through the months.
So am I correct in concluding every crime with a firearm is down compared to last year? And all of our homicides so far have been with a firearm?
That's right. Crimes against society, there's not a whole lot to note here, down 32.8 overall. But again, the DWIs, just comparatively, we knew that we did almost record numbers last year, and the folks have started that a little bit higher than they did last year already. So that's good moving out of the gate, January to January. For calls for service, every precinct below their moving average. Obviously, again, every January we're going to see this because of that 5-month overall. There's also that, as we've noted the past few months, the new change in the new CAD system, which overall will result in a more accurate representation of the calls as we move forward. For self-initiated calls, as expected with lower directed calls, every single precinct is higher than the moving average for self-initiated calls. Top calls, I know we keep it in there, and if you ever want it to come out, let us know. But same thing that we always see here. The sick case is always going to lead the way. And for TSRs, the committee, myself, Colonel Cox, Captain Means met actually a week ago today, right after command staff, to discuss what was the fourth quarter, of 2023. And again, good for the department that there was no discrepancies amongst our police officers. So the next few slides were a couple of things that the board had asked. So this one is on critical incidents and like our release of videos. The question was asked, how many times was a critical incident identified? How many did the department determine to release the body camera footage? And how long did it take to put the video together? So this shows exactly that in 2023, there were the 5 critical incidents identified, with all 5 of those having the footage released. Regarding the time frame to release the footage, the shortest was 24 days after the incident, the longest 45 days, and obviously the average of those 5 critical releases was 38 days.
And in general order, and suggests we should be having it out by when?
45. I think that overall, obviously, there's a lot of moving parts there. Crimes against persons folks have to do a lot of this, and then obviously the great work that our media staff does to put the videos together. But there's a lot of things to come together, and I think that our average is, pretty good, especially for the first year of tracking this. So.
We would echo that. Thank you all. A lot of work. We know that complex work, and to hit our target. Well done.
So another question that came from you all was relative to training of our officers. So the questions were, what basically is the breakdown of hours in training by precinct, bureau, or unit, divisions, and are our folks attending recurring or new classes at the academy? As I just said, the great work that Crimes Against and the media staff does as far as the critical release. I just want to point out, and he's actually here today, Sergeant Thompson from the Academy did a fantastic job. I like to note whenever people do really good things, but the amount of work that he put into getting this data for the board was extraordinary in a small amount of time. So Chris, I appreciate that. And actually he put together a real nice presentation himself that I can give to all of you after this, just kind of breaks it down even further than what we're going to show here.
Thank you,
But-
sir.
But that continuing education, so according to Sergeant Thompson, in 2023, we had 406 employees attend 751 elective courses. So again, this is not including required training, which would include like in-service, MACTAC, annual range qualification, things of that nature. Many of those employees took more than one new course. There were 50 reoccurring classes, or ones that we annually host on a normal basis, and then 51 of those new classes that were never before offered. So you can see that it's pretty even when it comes to that. Looking at this
Wait. Can you pause there for just a second? So is 406 and 751 good or bad, or trending in the right direction, trending in the wrong direction? Thank you.
So we have a lot of people signing up for the classes, but then work gets in the way, so they have to drop out.
And that's not just on markers also. Then the next little graph here. So in total, there were 12,191 hours taken by our folks. This chart breaks down the divisions and precincts based on the category and class they attended. Just some things to point out. So overall, technical studies were the highest, and those would be specialized studies that are obviously directly related to that job. Followed by leadership training, firearms training, skill development, which is physical skill proficiency in tasks, defensive tactics, and interpersonal perspectives, which would be things like communication skills, mental health, ethics. And then most precincts divisions had technical studies as their highest category, and then special operations, which is always going to be the case for special ops, had a higher focus on skill development. Any questions regarding the academy?
And these are courses that our officers are self-selecting.
That's right. Well, some of the, I think these would all include some of the skill development too, right? As far as like, yeah.
So they're either told to do them or they choose to do them.
That's right.
Same question, if you can answer it off the top of your head. If not, how does this compare to non-12-hour shift years? Same. And the proportion, the ranking of where our officers chose to go or were mandatorily required to go would be just as the captain described. So technical skills, and we'd have that same order, or did anything else juxtapose over the course of the last 2 years? So. Thank you.
Do we offer any type of online training?
Yeah, we do. So we have like virtual academies that we have to take. There's, I don't know how many courses per year, maybe 6 to 8 assigned to each employee, each officer that they have to complete at, certain periods of the year. Sir.
Sorry, we get a further breakdown with Commissioner Hassler with the academy on just reinforcing what you said.
Like I said, we can give you what Sergeant Thompson put together as well, which
Yes.
even breaks it down further. It'll tell you 4th precinct did this, 3rd precinct did that.
But what you have. Could you get to?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that's it for that portion, and I'm going to go ahead and we'll talk about the strategic plan. So I'm keeping this. I know that obviously Commissioner Wild was not here the last one, and Commissioner Ashworth, you had to miss the last time that we did the strategic plan update. So on behalf of your other colleagues who I think at the time, the way that we kind of rolled this out and explained some things you liked, if you want me to tweak anything for the next quarter, please let me know.
By the way, the reason we're asking now, I think we did that in August or somewhere August or September, is we've now had another year or two of our strategic plan. So
Yep.
yeah,
Get it.
just want to have a year-end recap on our progress on our 5-year plan.
So on the screen is the chart outlining the current progress of the department's 5-year plan. So as a recap, contained within the plan are 5 overall goals, which are broken down into 23 initiatives and 103 key activities. Pardon me. The graphic on the screen represents the main body of the plan, which drives how we quantify our progress, although the progress of the plan is much more than raw numbers, which I'll explain here shortly. So the numbers listed represent the 103 key activities, which is really what folks around the department are working on. So 3 of these are in a finalized, absolute completed status. So I'll tell you about those real quick. One was to evaluate the countywide resident officer program. This key activity was completed on April 12th of last year with the completion of the new general order, which now allows officers residing in surrounding counties to utilize and take home marked county police vehicles. The second one was to develop and implement an internal departmental intranet. And as you're all aware, the department's new intranet site went live last year and is virtually a one-stop shop for our employees to find easy access into applications, information, services, and data, things of that nature. And then finally, conducting a review of both precinct and COGIS boundaries to determine the most efficient allocation of resources. So a review of all of this was completed by virtually Bureau of Research and Analysis, along with Sergeant Conradi as well. Took a little bit, but that was conducted. So this is that one is complete. So 6 of the key activities are listed as reoccurring. So that means although they have been completed, they're constantly being reevaluated and can be updated throughout the life of the 5-year plan. A couple of highlights from the completed but reoccurring category are as follows. One of them was for various multi-agency training being developed and implemented by tactical operations. Our department recently completed another year of MACTAC training. So MACTAC is an acronym that stands for Multi-Assault Counterterrorism Action Capabilities. In layman's terms, this is just the police response to an active killer or active shooter type of situation. So nearly every department in St. Louis County participated in this training that was put on by tactical operations. So this is an example of a key activity that will never officially be completed because we expect each year's training to incorporate new tactics or trends to help guide our officers' response to those sorts of things. And then this year in 2024, a MACTAC tabletop exercise for our department supervisors will be on the agenda. Another one is the chief and executive command staff to produce periodic virtual messaging. As you're aware, the executive command staff, as well as all of our precinct commanders, are producing video messages sent to the department and posted on our YouTube channel. 2 more quick examples, not to give all of them, but enhance and revise policy to mirror best practices was one of the key activities. So our department constantly reviews policy and researches best practices from departments across the nation. We also look at IACP model policy, as we talk about all the time, and CLIA standards to ensure that we continue to be a CLIA Triarch accredited agency, meaning we have accreditations in law enforcement, communications, and our training academy, which, again, as you're also aware, we recently just completed a 4-year cycle of that. So on January 9th of this year, Research and Analysis conducted our yearly policy review, wherein every single policy within the department that has department-wide applicability is reviewed to see what can or should be updated. Roughly 60 policies were identified by our Bureau as either needing review or needing updates. So they will go through the normal policy process, sent to stakeholders and to subject matter experts to see if changes are needed or made, and ultimately reviewed by the department's command staff, executive command staff, chief, and ultimately in front of you. And then another quick example is providing quarterly updates on the strategic plan progress, which obviously is what I'm standing up here doing, but will continue through the life of the plan. So in addition to the 9 items that are in a completed or completed reoccurring status, as the graphic on the screen shows, 42 key activities are currently in an in-progress status. That means one of the department's committees or otherwise are actively working on an item to see it through until completion. I'm not going to go through 42 of them, but a couple of highlights there. Development and implement an online reporting system for certain identified crimes. WeCare, which is virtually the computer-aided reporting system for citizens, has moved past the pilot program that went live a few months ago, I believe. And originally, citizens had the ability to report stolen license plates or license plate tabs simply by entering it into the WeCare program themselves. So in the past few weeks, lost articles, property damage, fraudulent use of a credit device, and identity theft have additionally been added. This key activity, I pointed this out as it's still in progress, but this one will likely be moved to a completed reoccurring at the next update. Also of note, and aside to the strategic plan, but more of an attaboy again for our department, our folks, and I don't know if Dave's in here, are assisting Jefferson County with the implementation of their own WeCare system. So strategic plan didn't say we had to do that, but good work by those folks as well.
Well done.
Another quick example, develop a process to allow for more public involvement in our policy development process. So as I just said, the research and analysis recently identified a policy to test during our annual policy review on January 9th. We're consulting with IT right now regarding the best way to post that policy for public comment. So in addition to the general order that is on the agenda for today's meeting, written directive system, it has language in there regarding the policy development process, encouraging public opinion and internal employee comments. And then 2 more quick examples. Evaluate specialized units to determine if they're meeting the department's mission as well as unit goals. That's the way that the key activity reads. So the Division of Operational Support is currently working on the creation of succession manuals for specialized positions throughout the entire department. In turn, our hybrid committee is working on identifying commission positions that could be filled by professional staff members, as you are aware. Once these tasks are completed, then further evaluation will be brought to executive command staff. That discussion will be had. But we're moving that along. They're doing some good work to identify all of these things and ultimately make those decisions. And then finally, develop a method to enhance understanding, application, and perception of all critical department policies. So research and analysis identified critical department policies again on January 9th. The list was recently given to our executive command staff for review. I've asked them to return that next week, or we will discuss it at the executive command staff meeting for further discussion. Once those have been solidified, the critical department policies, they'll be put on the website, and as is explained in what will be our new policy, our new written directive system. So so I said during my first strategic plan report back in April that this document, a 5-year plan, will always be like a living, breathing document. So the first year of the plan showed us many things that have worked, but also some that needed to be refined. I met with the committee chairs late in 2023 to discuss how their committees can continue to move the needle, ultimately completing the key activities they've been assigned. Many of the 35 tasks assigned across the 7 department committees are nearing fruition and are coming closer to a completed status. So I was recently asked if we measure our success from the strategic plan by the number of key activities that we've completed. And the answer to that is emphatically no. I don't look at it that way at all. I believe I can speak for not only the chief, the executive command staff, and the entire command staff when I say that we measure the success of the plan when asking the question, does it drive the day-to-day operations of the department and make our employees' jobs easier and more efficient, as well as cater to the needs of the residents of St. Louis County? So if we as a department were worried about sheer numbers of completed items, I would have brought to executive command staff for their review and selected the key activities that were quote unquote easiest to complete. Instead, we selected key activities that will enhance the department and the needs of the citizens. So all in all, after this long-winded update, I'm extremely pleased at the hard work and effort, obviously, not only the members of all the committees, but the entire department, and excited to see, what this looks like next quarter and virtually at the end of year 2.
Questions?
I have a few. Just one.
No, go ahead.
Subpart A. Of the 35 key activities or 103 initiatives, or however we want to break it down, are there ones that we are putting on hold or terminating because they no longer fit our needs?
Nothing terminating. There are also, so as I said, there's 35 key activities. So you have 7 committees.
Mhm.
Each committee was assigned 5 key activities. So that's 35. Intuitively, there's already 7 being worked on that aren't being worked on by those committees, but are being worked on elsewhere in the department. Ms. Wagner's working on the whole leadership, as you're well aware. Like that will touch actually 2 or 3 of the key activities. That's not assigned to a committee. She's not a part of that committee, even though she's a division head, if that makes sense. But there's things being worked on outside of those committees as well.
Go ahead.
No, I want to add a tail on, so please go next.
Okay. Of all of these initiatives, or whatever we want to call them, are we being thoughtful about putting the most amount of effort or resources behind the ones that need the most immediate attention right now?
Yes, 100%. And I'll say that just kind of in my closing thing is there's always an easy way to do everything. So technically, I mean, I can look at, of the 42 in progress, I can probably look at what the divisions return to me. And ultimately, I give to Marissa Williams, who culls all this data for us and does a fantastic job. But I can look at that and just be like, well, technically, we could check this off, this off. If we just wanted it just to be, well, it's just completed. But then what difference does it do from every strategic plan? I've been on this department 21 years. You know how many times I looked at a strategic plan up until this year or last year? Not many, 0. So point being, do we want it to ultimately make the department more efficient and better? Yes. And that's why some of these, you know, if we looked at, again, just at numbers, and I'd be like, man, it's only 3 out of 103 are completed in the first year, and we're really behind. Let's start checking these off. But that's not how it is. We're given the attention. A lot of this comes back to the chief and the deputy chief, and then they give further direction on, all right, hey, a lot of things need funding. Where are we securing those things? You know, so there's a lot of steps in the process that go into this.
Who is part of the decision-making process? It seems like, and I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't be, but it seems like you are.
It's not.
Oh, that's not what I was suggesting at all.
Believe me, it won't hurt my feelings. No. Who's part of the decision-making process on what exactly?
On what we're pushing hard forward.
So ultimately, so I go through, like at the beginning of this, I went through the plan. And then I gave each of the colonels maybe 15 suggestions, right? And then we talked about those. And Colonel Cox, who I'm staring at, like, he also had his list of things that he wanted. So then the executive command staff talked about them, and they said, these are the 5 then that we're going to assign to the Division of Patrol. And then these are the 5 that's going to operational support. These are the 5, so on and so forth. So the decisions coming from the executive leadership team, number one, yes, I will look at things. The most recent one that was completed was by the Division of Patrol. It was in regards to the study on the COGIS boundaries. So that was completed. So then we had to assign another one. So then Marissa and I will sit down and we'll say, hey, here's some others that the colonels have already talked about. We'll ultimately bring it, like I did, last week or 2 weeks ago, to Colonel Cox and say, what do you like? And then we bring it to the chief and deputy chief, and they say yes, no, or move forward with something else. So that's how the decisions are kind of made there.
Anyone else before I jump? So I think it's only 1.5 now, or maybe 1.25, because you answered the one, but it's the antithesis of Commissioner Schwerin's question. We talked about it being a living, breathing document. She went to the side of anything coming off. Are we adding anything? Is there anything through the course of the first year that we'd say, you know what, this is based on whatever's changed around us, we need to have this and this in the strategic plan? Or if not, is there a mechanism to add those things as 5 years progresses?
The mechanism is there. We've talked about it. We talked about it at the beginning of last year that yes, we can add things to the plan. To this point, no. That said, we have seen that there, again, I explained the one where you've got the hybrid committee working on the professional or commission positions that could be filled with professional staff. So we see a lot of overlap there that we're trying to bring together. If something pops up that we want to add to the plan, we absolutely can. We said that at the beginning. So we have not to this point, but the mechanism is there.
Excellent. Thank you. And the quarter is, I believe you answered it. So you went to 3 completed. I personally would share that's pretty good because that means we're working on things that are more substantive, right? If we had half our strategic plan done in the first year, we're probably not focused on the right things. But the flip side of that would be, so we're roughly 50% we've started. Do we deem that success through the first year of a 5-year plan?
I do.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thanks, sir.
Want to get rid of those easy ones. I don't think there's an easy one in there, but that's brought to our attention to make sure that we are getting those things taken care of. We're not just dealing with numbers, as the captain said. We're dealing with what's going to help the department, what's going to help the committee. Our community. And again, I don't think they're just working through to get the easy ones done. So, Julie, you're up.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good morning. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I just have a couple of things to update the board on today. So currently we have 135 vacancies for commissioned staff. However, we have 12 in background right now, and that's a combination of experienced officers and recruits. We also have 12 recruits in the academy at this time, and they're all doing very well. So that's always a plus. For professional staff, we currently have 33 vacancies. 10 are security officers, which we have 7 security officers in background right now. And then we have 3 vacancies in dispatch. So with dispatch, we are getting very close. I don't want to jinx us, and I also don't want to say fully staffed, but I'm going to say it. So we are making some great strides, with dispatch and with security officers. So we're going to celebrate that as a very small win right now. In terms of retention, we also had a great win for January. We saw a significant decrease in resignations and retirements, numbers that we haven't seen since 2019. So, we hope to see that continue. So really looking forward to that. Also, since October, we have been reaching out to those employees that are on extended sick leave or leave without pay. And we're talking they've been on these for several years. That list in October had 10 people on it. We've been able to get that down to 7 now. We've been able to either get them back to work in their original position or into a different position within the department that they're able to do. So we're slowly working through each case by case and trying to get that list down, get these people back to work, maybe just in a different position if needed. So really trying to work through that list right now. In terms of recruiting, we have put together a mass hiring event for the end of March. So it's going to be Saturday, March 30th at the Academy. And we are also going to make it a department showcase. So we're going to have several of our specialized units there. So we're looking to have K9, TAC, Metro Air Support Helicopter. So several of our different specialized units. So also using this as a dual purpose. So really trying to show off what our department is all about, but also using this as a recruiting and hiring event to where we can try and expedite the hiring process. So we'll be doing pre-hire testing, physical test, and then also background interviews all that day. So we are going to be doing social media blasts with advertising it, and then also partnering with our media partners to try and get some different stories out with getting that word out to everybody. So that's going to be March 30th. It's a Saturday. And then lastly, recruitment officer Haas and I will be attending the 13th annual Police Recruitment and Retention Conference next week. Really looking forward to this. So this is a law enforcement specific conference that explores new approaches to recruiting, maximizing lateral hires, different retention efforts. So really looking forward to getting some fresh ideas. And like I said, it's law enforcement specific, so very unique, and hoping to really get some good things to bring back to the team for that. So, so that's next week. So hoping to get some fresh things from that.
Where's your event on the 30th going to be held? I missed that.
It's going to be at the Academy.
At the Academy, okay.
Yes.
And how many folks do you anticipate hopefully coming out?
Well, we don't know yet. So in the past, we've tried to do mass hiring events similar to this, but without the showcase piece of it.
Mhm.
And they've been unsuccessful. So we're trying to take, okay, what happened at those events? What did we do and what can we do differently to hopefully make this one successful? But similar events, for instance, in 2019, we had about 100 people come out. And we got maybe 2 or 3 people out of it. In 2020, we had about 50 people come out and we got 1 person out of it. So it's varied a lot. So we don't know what to expect quite yet, but we are requiring everybody to fill out an application before they attend. However, if anybody does come, we'll have the means to have them fill one out there. We're not going to turn anybody away. So we should have an idea of how many people we're expecting, at least a rough idea before they come out. So, so we're really putting a lot of thought into it, a lot of intention into it, to really try to make that successful. Of course, the response from a lot of people in the office was like, oh, we've tried them in the past and they haven't been successful. And, so of course it was like, okay, it's a lot to risk, asking everybody to come in on a Saturday and all of that, but, we're not going to know till we try again. But let's do things differently and try to make it successful and see what we can do. So
I've got maybe a question or comment. March 30th sounds great, first of all, so I want to tell you that. Is there any focus on upping recruitment for women? And I ask that because I think it was last year that there was an event that was focused just on women. It wasn't specifically recruiting, sort of semi kind of thing. So
we're doing that in the fall.
Okay.
Women policing event.
Yes. Okay.
Yep, and we do that at the Academy as well.
Okay. Yeah. Right. I know it was at the Academy. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. It's at the Academy. Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Can I ask you this? How successful was the one last year in terms of women applying?
I know that we had a decent turnout. I would have to ask though how many we actually, recruited from the event, how many we had apply from it, because I'm not sure off the top of my head.
All right.
I can find out though.
Okay.
For sure.
Thank you.
A few, if no one else has any. So you talked about the improvement in retention. We'll call it that.
Yes.
And I think we would all acknowledge that seeing a 0 at the end of a month with no turnover was pretty impressive or pretty darn close. Several weeks where we had it that way. And we talked about the increase in interest in the department and the decrease in turnover. Do we know why on both of those?
Not necessarily. I don't know that there's any single thing we can tie it to. We're always looking at our exit interviews and things like that. But there's not necessarily one thing that I can point to.
Yeah, it wasn't one thing. It's usually not, right? But
Right.
you had a feel for what was driving that because it does seem different than we've experienced for the last many years.
Right.
Thank you. The second gets into budgeting. So I was going to ask the deputy chief. He's since stepped out. I was going to tease him a little bit, but or HR, and it's really both, right? We have a lot of people that we know have their points. So the board's asked, who's eligible for retirement. We hear, well, there's X percentage of our people or X number of our people who have their points, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to retire. Do we do anything? Do we have a communication out at in the budgeting cycle or whenever that says, hey, are you thinking about retiring next year? Not a lock-in, right? But it gives us a chance to do a little bit of talent planning. Do we do anything like that?
Not that I know of.
Chief, is that something we can or should think about doing? Just again, it's not, yes, I'm going to retire and here's the date I'm going to retire. It's more of, yeah, I have my points, but I think I'm thinking about it, right? Well, that might impact who we might make a promotion to or how many sergeants we look through.
Might make people a little nervous.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So that beneficiality is based off of the accuracy of their responses. Is that what I'm hearing? I may say no and I still do, or I may say yes and I don't. Yeah, we're not less worried about the date. Right. I want to continue to think about that. It seems like we should be able to get in front of this to some degree.
Right.
Right. The last one, and this may conclude if you're done, because it's going to segue back into the branding piece. So as long as the PIO and Vera, you're here. Sorry, Sergeant, didn't say. You were sitting, I thought you were sitting over there earlier. So yeah, thank you. So in this mass recruiting effort, is the new branding piece going to start to play into that or not? And then we'll use that as a segue back into the part of the conversation that we didn't get to when Nick was here.
Yeah, the marketing materials that I made are made so that I can throw that in there if we're able to, or not if we weren't ready to use it yet. So I made them so that we could go either way.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Director? All right. If you'll stay up for a minute, Vera, you, whomever, Sergeant, I don't know whether you're going to do it all your own or whatever, just trying to make sure we have the right people up here as we have the conversation. Can we go back to the presentation Nick did? He had to hurry. We appreciate that. At the end, I think we may have had a few extra questions. Anything that you two want to elaborate on? Anything you want to make sure that we all hear based on what he said again? And I'm doing this only because we heard him through, right? There may be things that weren't said. What else needs to be said? What else do we all need to be aware of?
I think one thing, and he kind of touched on it a little bit, was it wasn't just buy-in from our unit and the chief and deputy chief. We also took this back to our workshop group and a few new individuals and presented it to them. And this was the campaign that won unanimously. There wasn't even any second thoughts about it out of the campaigns they brought to us. So this was definitely a joint effort between information they brought in from external and internal within our department. So it was, I think it was very comprehensive.
One of the things they did in the first presentation was he presented that presentation and two others, give us an idea of what they were looking at and what we wanted to decide on. And the one that he showed us today was unanimous among all.
As he was presenting, something I wrote down in my notes what he presented seemed more than colors and pictures and what we're going to put up. It really seemed more like a cultural development kind of piece. And I'd be interested to see how the department plans to, move forward with ensuring buy-in from the entire department. Because if we have this externally facing, and if we throw it on a couple of things internally facing, I don't think it's going to get us there. I think we really need some kind of adoption or plan for that.
Agreed. There is an internal component to this that starts with recruitment and goes through the academy, field training, all of that. There is definitely a component of that. And that's what we need to talk about with our rollout. Now that we've presented it and the chief and deputy chief and everyone's on board, as well as the police board, now we can talk about what that rollout's going to look like. But yes, there is definite an internal piece to this so that we have our department buy-in, because without the department buy-in, the external messaging really doesn't mean anything. It's got to be something that's in us as well.
And it's important that the company, Elasticity, they're not like just done. They're not like,
right,
here are your colors, have a great job. No, they are willing to help us through those types of processes, whether it is brand initiation for police officers and professional staff members. Ms. Wagner, in terms of recruiting, I'm purposely not pushing a whole lot out with recruiting aggressively, because once the brand drops, I want everything to be in line, whether it's social media, news media, interviews. Are we doing buses? And so that we have these splash pan effects where we may start a campaign here, but what's the next thing? So we have somewhat of a content calendar ready to go so that people internally are seeing it as well as externally.
So you'll bring whatever that plan is that the commissioner is referring to, whatever you're working on. You'll bring not the details of it, but that there is a plan, and here are the highlights and lowlights of it.
Absolutely.
Right. Do you have a rough sorry, I jumped in front of you. Do you have a rough time frame in which you think that will be ready to go?
I would anticipate it within the next couple of months. I want to get this out immediately. I mean, this has been a long time in progress, and we really just had to get the final blessing from you guys and the chief on this so that we could roll it all out. But I want to do it as soon as possible.
Forgive me for jumping. Couple others, if you don't mind. That internal, external, thank you. I know the board was pretty insistent. It's got to be a branding for both, right? And sometimes that's hard to merge because what the external wants to hear, what we want them to hear might be different. It's nice that we found something to do with that. It's only a question, and it's not to derail it. It's not to imply I'm for or against it. I liked what I saw was just that all around county does feel a little territorial, right? We're not beyond county, and we have a leadership role that's beyond the county and policing. So that would be my only concern when you get into the branding piece. What I'll take an aside here, and maybe it's my version of my conclusion. Fortuitous that we saw both the branding and the work that Colonel Cox is leading, because those two get together like right now. I mean, those are twins, because what that branding mechanism looks like gets into some of the work that they're going to have to do about community involvement and engaging. Commissioner Hassler focused on this, engaging the right people, right? All those things start to work in unison. So as those two things work out separately, let's just please make sure we're connecting those, because if one's hearing something and one's not, right? We're saying we're community-based, but that's not how. Just please make sure those work in concert together. That's pretty important. And maybe a tactical thing. He had St. Louis County, SAINT. I'm not sure that what the legal name is, whether it's ST period Lewis or whether it's SAINT. Just make sure that we're appropriate with that. All right. Thank you. I personally thought it was great. So.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Colonel Cox, same set of questions to you. Anything that Mr. Apt didn't get to? Because again, he was on his short time frame. We didn't have him on one, but he needed to move quickly. Anything else that wasn't said, since we were bouncing through him pretty quickly?
I think the chief, I don't want to speak for you, but I think the plan may be a little bit further out than Thomas said, because it's a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved, politicians, different chiefs. So I think it's going to take a little longer to implement. However, that's the regional plan, but we will obviously do our part in our high crime areas to do our special enforcement and to start identifying some of these social outreach groups that we can utilize to make referrals for our residents. So the chief and I talked about this. I would like to see us get started next month in the precincts. I spoke with Captain Roediger and Morgan to try to get the weather's getting ready to change, so we need to get out there. So we won't wait for the full plan. We'll do what we normally do, and of course, we'll be in compliance with the overall plan.
Excellent.
What do you think is the biggest challenge or hurdle that we need to overcome? And when I say we, I mean the entire regional group. So maybe it's more.
Yeah. Who's in charge? Will those involved be held accountable to ensure that the plan is working? I think that those will be the biggest obstacles.
Insightful. Not tactical. It's not. Yeah. Oh, it usually comes back to that. Doesn't come back to leadership. For as an aside, I think my numbers are right. So sitting and running them, the 0.016% of our population that causes 50% or 40%, that's 5,000 people. Yeah.
I think Captain Cavaletti, Lieutenant Colonel Cunningham, at 31 years of age for the suspect seems kind of high. We've had, I think, Captain Shellman and his group put some numbers together for us. We think that number is going to be a little bit lower. We anticipated that.
How much lower do you think?
I'm thinking mid to early 20s. Brian, what did?
So is that a St. Louis County specific number is lower than the region, or we have a question about the integrity of the numbers?
I think some of the numbers they utilize St. Louis County, St. Louis City, what they could get from some of the municipalities and St. Clair County. I would think in St. Louis County that our numbers will be reflective of the other places. That's just my opinion.
So, many of those are still up in the upper 20s. So to be in the low 20s would be a significant difference between what they would see and what they have seen and what we're seeing, right? So we think 31 is high. To move to low 20s when they're all at 27 and 28 seems like, just make sure we're doing the numbers right to the commissioner's point. All right. Anything else? Thank you. So can we backtrack here for a moment? Do you need us to approve the marketing program, or was that informational only? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I took the lead over you guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're good.
Speaking
Good.
of what Colonel Cox was talking about, Deputy Chief mentioned something that I was sitting down next to him, and he mentioned leadership. He mentioned territorialism.
Right.
Because that's going to be the biggest problem
Right.
with this program is that we're going to be doing things one way. And I think what they want is for all of us to do it the same way. And I don't think that's going to happen.
If I, yesterday, and just talking to Mr. Apt about this timing sequence, that was the question that I asked him. Hey, have you worked with anything that's like St. Louis? I'm not from here, so I can tell you I haven't. I don't know if it's a different view or not, but it doesn't work as one. It's not like having New York City or Washington, D.C. Are you prepared for that? And he said, we acknowledge it. We're aware of it. We're trying to adapt it to St. Louis so that we can do our best to overcome those. But that was his biggest concern too, in addition to leadership. Thank you. Thank you all. A lot of effort in the last 2.5 hours, but I hope you saw that the first hour was 2 presentations that are critically important to how we're going to move forward in the future. So thank you. Sorry. All right. May we have an approval of the minutes from our January 17th, 2024 meeting?
I move that the minutes from the January 17th, 2024 meeting be approved.
Second that motion.
Any further conversation on those minutes? All in favor of approving the January 17th, 2024 meetings, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? May we have a motion to approve the minutes of our February 7th, 2024 meeting?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from February 7th, 2024 meeting.
Second.
Any further conversation on the February 7th, 2024 meeting? All in favor of approval of those minutes from the February 7th, 2024 meeting, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved for both the meetings. Thank you. Letters and communication. Any incoming communications?
Did you see the email from the students at Washington University?
We did, yes. I responded to him. I did. I responded to him last night, just asking with Commissioner Swearen's help, asked him for some clarification on what, for those of you who don't know, he was asking to sit down. We're not, program entitled Supervisor Academy on March 25th at a cost not to exceed $4,250. The second is a professional service agreement, also with Training Force USA LLC. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Com Center Wellness on March 12th, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $4,250. The third is a professional service agreement. Lastly, with Training Force USA LLC, it is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Psychological Resiliency for First Responders on March 13th, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $4,250. The fourth is a professional service agreement with Public Grants and Trainings Initiative. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Detective Boot Camp on March 20th and March 21st, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $6,000. The fifth is a professional service agreement with Public Grants and Training Initiatives. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Crime 123, Interviewing and Interrogation on March 6th at 2024 at a cost not to exceed $3,000. The sixth, also with Public Grants and Training Initiatives, is a professional service agreement for a contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Courtroom Success on March 7th, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $3,000. And the seventh contract is a professional service agreement with Professional Law Enforcement Training LLC. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Tactical De-Escalation Techniques on March 14th, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $5,550.
Did I get through that okay this time? All right. May I have a motion to approve the 7 contracts just mentioned?
Move we approve these 7 contracts.
Second. Any further conversation on these 7 contracts? All in favor of approving these first 7 contracts, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The second 7 contracts include a professional service agreement with IXII Group, Inc. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach 5 sessions of a program entitled Communication Training Officer on April 1st, 2024 through April 3rd, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $6,000. The next is a professional service agreement with Law Enforcement Risk Management Group, Inc. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Managing and Supervising the FTO Unit from April 2nd, 2024 to April 4th, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $8,500. The next is a professional service agreement for The Right Solution, Inc. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Interpersonal Perspectives and Stress Management - 4-hour session on March 19th, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $500. The next is a professional service agreement with Vista Law Enforcement Training and Consulting, LLC. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program, Missouri Sunshine Law, Open Meeting and Records Law on April 1st, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $500. The next is a professional service agreement with Patrick E. Horeen. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled First Line Supervision from March 11th, 2024 to March 15th, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $1,895. The next is a professional service agreement with Stephen Gerard Mollering Jr. It is a new contract for an instructor to teach a program entitled Combatant Tactics and Self-Defense for Law Enforcement on March 13th, 2024 and March 14th, 2024 at a cost not to exceed $4,800. And the last was a memorandum of understanding with the Illinois State Police. So it is not with the CMPA. The recommendation is to improve an MOU with the Illinois State Police. This request is related to the current MOU signed in January of 2020 between the Drug Enforcement Agency and the St. Louis County Police Department, which involves the sharing of license plate recognition, LPR data. The DEA houses their LPR data server in Alton, Illinois. The Illinois State Police Department has requested the MOU because we are currently sharing data with a server physically located in the state of Illinois. This MOU will enable the St. Louis County Police Department to continue to share LPR data with the DEA.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a brief question. In the second professional service agreement, the program entitled Managing and Supervising the FTO Unit. What is FTO? Field Training Officer. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
The MOU with the Illinois State Police, the county counselor's office is on board with that. Everything's okay. We can actually share data across state lines.
Any other questions? All right, may we have a motion to approve these last 7 contracts or memorandums?
I move that the last 7 contracts and the MOU be approved by the board.
And just clarify, 6 contracts and an MOU.
That's what I said. That's what.
Yep, thank you. 7. All right, so we have a first and a second.
Yes, sir.
Any further conversation on these last 7 agreements? All in favor of approving those last 7, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have 14 new agreements, contracts, and/or MOUs approved. So thank you. Captain?
We have 2 general orders on the agenda today, hopefully for the board's approval. First one is General Order 94, Juvenile Detention Procedures. Revisions to this policy include updating the location of the juvenile fingerprinting, clarifying when curfew reports are required, and mandating that fingerprints and photographs are obtained when juveniles are taken into custody. The location change of the fingerprinting devices also required an update to procedure when placing a juvenile in the detention facility. Hopefully, everybody had a chance to take a look at this one. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns?
I just have one. Is it retroactive 60 years so that Commissioner Banks's mother, grandmother, my mother, grandmother, who referred to us as incorrigible years ago, we're okay, right? All right. No other questions?
Statute of limitation.
All right. I wasn't sure.
All right, and then
Wait, let's go ahead. Let's just go ahead and vote on it. Is everybody okay? Very good. May we have a motion to approve General Order 24.002 written directive system?
I move we approve General Order 20, no.
Oh,
it's
sorry, 24.094.
Juvenile detention.
Thank you for correcting. Second. All right, all in favor of approving General Order 24-094 juvenile detention, please say aye.
Say it again. General order what?
24-094 juvenile detention. Yeah, my mistake too. They listed them differently, so I was working.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll ask it again. All in favor of approving General Order 24-094 juvenile detention, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, General Order passer.
if I went off the script there, that's.
No. It just, they were,
Yeah. All right, the second one is, as was mentioned, General Order 2, which is written directive system. Revisions to this policy include the introduction of both the public and internal comments, which I kind of mentioned during my update, on open policies and a section dedicated to job descriptions. Additionally, some language is updated to appropriately refer to the record management system, Power DMS. We also had a special order that was incorporated in the draft and will not be canceled. Any questions, comments, or concerns on this one?
I do have a question on this. What constitutes a critical policy?
Well, so research and analysis on, as I said, on January 9th, got together and we went through every single policy in this department and said what we believe is critical. So we look at, again, this comes from IACP. It's like a new standard moving forward. A lot of the major departments across the nation have already done this. So we're just getting on board with that. Understanding that these critical policies, what will happen once they're approved, they haven't been approved yet by ultimately the chief. Like I said, it was given to executive command staff. We'll discuss that at the next executive meeting on Tuesday. Once they're approved by him, they will need to be signed by every employee yearly rather than just once moving forward. We can also test on those at the discretion of the chief, put tests and things, questions into Power DMS.
So policies that are already in place can be deemed critical.
That's correct.
And new policies going forward can be deemed critical.
So we have a list of 6 right now that we've deemed to be critical. And again, these can change, but just, I know the question will be asked. So emergency vehicle operations, use of force, duty to intervene, armed and dangerous persons, that's our entire MACTAC response to active shooter, search and seizure procedures, which is the entire Fourth Amendment, and workplace harassment and discrimination.
So every year, every member will sign that
So
they,
if they are deemed to be critical, they'll be marked as critical in Power DMS, and then every year, Power DMS will issue it to every employee in our department. They will have to re-sign that they acknowledge what is in that order.
as an aside, that may be new to a police department. That's not abnormal in business. I will share with you that, I'm looking at a colleague in the back, there are about 5 or 6 policies that organizations will send out every year to have every employee
And
sign
in
off on.
fairness, I think, again, 21 years, there's a lot of folks in here. The day you hit the street, you talk with your field trainer about all of these policies and you constantly go over them. It's just the first time that we're actually saying now that, hey, we're going to make everybody reread those. My field trainer happens to be sitting right there, Tony Cavaletti, and we would go over use of force and pursuit policy and all those things on a daily basis. So
Nicely done.
yeah. But point being, these are things that we've all discussed. If you said to any employee in our department, give me the top 3 policies, they're all going to say the same thing. So, but again, just better tracking for us and making sure that our employees are aware.
Could you talk a little bit about Roman numeral 2N special orders? Where the revision of up to 2 sections, does that provide enough flexibility?
There we go. Yes, so the way we feel, sir, is that if we don't like to issue special orders in the first place to just amend a general order. If more than 2 sections need to be revised, then the way that we look at it is then the entire thing needs to be reviewed and go through the entire policy process. If it's something that's really quick that may require 1 section to change, then the chief has the authority to make that decision. If not, then we send it for legal to the FOP, ESOP, things of that nature, and we get all of the subject matter experts in to make sure at that point, if there's more than 2, hey, let's see if we're missing anything else that needs to be changed. So that's why.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? All right. May we have a motion to approve General Order 24-002 written directive system?
I move the general order 24-002 written directive system. The draft be approved.
Have a second.
Second.
Any further conversation on GO 24-002? All in favor of approving General Order 24-002 written directive system, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your work to get those done. All right, next section of our agenda is Board of Managers. Captain, not sure whether you do it or Commissioner Hassler as the leader of the Academy. Who puts forward the nomination for Chief Hampton?
So, no, I was going to say for you to do.
Delegate.
Thank you for that, because that was going to be one of the questions that you would have received, as you well know. So thank you for being proactive.
And so I move that Chief Hampton be approved as a new member of the Board of Managers.
Maybe a second.
I second that motion.
Any further conversation on Chief Hampton? All in favor of approving Chief Larry Hampton of the University City Police Department to the City and County, St. Louis County and Municipal Police Academy Board of Managers, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Anything from a public forum perspective? All right, may we have a motion to move to closed session, please? Well, so, okay, which one do I do? Is that not what I did last time and was told not to? All right, then my mistakes. Continuing. All right. I thought for sure that's what I'd done.
They're just messing.
My bad. Apparently so. Very well, they're doing it. The Board of Police Commissioners may vote to go into closed meeting for legal advice and review of claims and lawsuits involving the police department, section 610.0211 RSMO and sections 114.0201 SLCRO. Discussion of employee and personnel matters, section 610.0213 and 13 RSMO and sections 114.020.13 and 13 SLCRO. Preparation and discussion for negotiations with employee groups, section 610.0219 RSMO and section 114.020.19. Specifications for competitive bidding until the specifications are published for bid, section 610.02111 and section 114.020.111. Discussion of security measures and investigative information that, if disclosed, has the potential to endanger the health and safety of an individual or the public, section 610.02118A RSMO, 114.020.123 SLCRO, and discussion of operational guidelines, policies, and specific response plans developed, adopted, or maintained by the department for use in responding to or preventing any critical incident which has the potential to endanger individual or public safety or health, where the public interest in non-disclosure outweighs the public in disclosure, section 610.02118D RSMO and 114.020.121 SLCRO.
For all of the reasons that you just so eloquently stated, I move that we go into closed
I'd like
meeting.
to hear him again, please.
Second.
Second. Amy, would you take a roll call vote, please? Yes, but I'm half tempted to say no, just to be funny. Yes.
Commissioner Banks?
Yes.
Commissioner Hassler?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Wild?
Yes.
We're enclosed. Thank you, Thomasina. That was awesome. We have returned from close. We voted in closed session to return to open session. That vote was unanimous. Anything else before we close the day?
I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Any further conversation on adjournment? Amy, would you call us out, please? Oh, one more thing. Sorry. Go ahead. We got to do that now that we've done it. It was just the date for the next meeting. Go ahead.
Commissioner Ashford?
Yes.
Commissioner Banks?
Yes.
Commissioner Hassler?
Yes.
Commissioner Schwerin?
Yes.
And Commissioner Wild?
Yes.
Very good. We are adjourned for the day. Our next meeting will be on March 13th at 9 a.m.